Have you ever been there? You're drinking your morning coffee, and suddenly you realize you can't even taste it. Because you've fallen down a rabbit hole, spending the last 20 minutes rehearsing a comeback to a former colleague who was rude to you 2 years ago. Or you're trying to sleep, but instead, you're obsessing over why your boss ended that email with a period instead of an exclamation mark. Does that mean you messed up? Are you about to get fired? Even when you're preparing for something important, instead of focusing on the task, your brain is running 100 simulations of everything that could go wrong and how you'll survive the embarrassment. It feels like you're trapped in a room with a radio that only plays your most cringeworthy moments on repeat. We've all been there. We call it overthinking. We treat it like a personality trait, a glitch in our DNA, or a heavy backpack we're forced to carry for the rest of our lives. We say, "I'm just an overthinker," as if we're describing the color of our eyes. But here is the truth that changes everything. You are not an overthinker. You've just never been taught how to think. We spent over a decade in school. We were taught how to calculate the area of a trapezoid, memorize the dates of ancient battles, and solve for x. But did we ever have a single class on how to manage the 35,000 thoughts that scream for our attention every single day? Did anyone ever hand us a manual for the 3-pound supercomputer sitting between our ears? No, we were taught what to think. Facts, formulas, and data. But we were never taught how to operate the machinery of our own minds. This is the processor paradox. Your brain is a high-precision computer capable of solving any problem. You were given control of it, but nobody explained the settings. You're trying to get things done, but instead of a green done button, you're getting hit with a flood of error notifications, and you have no idea how to stop the stream. In this video, we aren't going to give you self-help cliches like just breathe. We are going to dive into the actual architecture of your mind. We're going to look at the hidden gears, the biological and mental protocols that separate people who are paralyzed by their thoughts from those who know how to direct them. It's time to stop blaming your personality and start upgrading your skills. Let's calibrate your computer. To stop the spiral, we first have to understand why we get sucked into it. Imagine you're sitting in a movie theater. You're in the very front row, so close that the screen fills your entire field of vision. When an explosion happens on screen, you flinch. When the hero is in danger, your heart races. You're so immersed in the story that you've forgotten you're just sitting in a dark room looking at flickering lights. You aren't just watching the movie, you're in it. This is exactly how most of us live our lives with our thoughts. When a thought pops up saying, "Everyone thinks you're a failure," you don't just hear it, you feel it. You're in the front row, and that thought is the only reality you can see. But now, imagine standing up. You walk away from the screen, up the aisle, and all the way to the back of the theater, into the projection booth. From here you see the whole room. You see the projector humming, the beam of light hitting the wall, and the screen at a distance. You realize the explosion isn't real, it's just a sequence of images. You're no longer a victim of the plot, you're the observer of the film. This mental shift is what psychologists call metacognition. It's a fancy word for a simple life-changing skill, thinking about thinking. The average person has about 35,000 automatic thoughts a day. Think of them like background refresh or pop-up ads on your computer. Overthinking isn't caused by having too many thoughts. It's caused by the habit of clicking on every single one. You're trying to engage with every pop-up, and your system is crashing because of it. The skill you were never taught in school is how to step into that projection booth. To do this, we use a simple 3-step protocol called distancing. Step 1, notice. Instead of being the thought, you catch it. You say, "I notice I'm having a thought that I'm going to fail this presentation." Step 2, classify. You label it. Is this a useful thought or a spam thought? Is it future tripping or rumination? By labeling it, you strip away its power. Step 3, navigate. Now that you aren't drowning in it, you choose your reaction. Do you need to take action, or do you simply let the film keep rolling while you stay in the booth? This is a surgical strike against overthinking. It creates a gap between the stimulus and your reaction. In that gap lies your freedom. Once you realize you are the observer, not the movie. The radio in that room doesn't have to stop playing. You just stop believing everything it says. But even when we know how to step back, there's a biological reason why our brain keeps trying to drag us back into that front row. Let's look at the engine that's constantly generating these movies. So we've stepped into the projection booth. We're watching the movie from a distance. But there's a question that still bugs us. Why won't the movie just stop? Why does the brain keep dragging us back into the past or throwing us into a terrifying future? The answer lies in a biological system called the default mode network, or DMN. Think of the DMN as the background refresh on your smartphone. You know how apps like Instagram or Mail keep running in the background, searching for updates and draining your battery even when you aren't using them. Your brain does the exact same thing. The moment you aren't focused on a specific task, like washing the dishes or walking to your car, your DMN kicks in. It's your brain's idling state. But instead of just resting, the DMN starts mental time travel. It scans the past for social mistakes and simulates the future for potential threats. It's not trying to make you miserable. It's trying to keep you alive. Evolutionarily, the person who obsessed over why the tribe leader looked at them weirdly was the person who didn't get kicked out of the tribe. The problem is that in the modern world, this background refresh is constantly overheating. It's running too many tabs. It's draining your mental battery before you even start your day. School taught us how to use our active focus, but they never taught us how to toggle the default mode off. To do that, we need a physical kill switch. We can't just tell the brain to stop thinking. That's like telling a fire to stop being hot. We have to change the chemistry of the system. We do this through a protocol called the 2-4-8 breathing technique. It's a manual override for your nervous system. Inhale for 2 seconds. This is the trigger. Hold for 4 seconds. This signals safety to the brain. Exhale for 8 seconds. This activates the vagus nerve, which is like the abort button for the DMN. When you double the length of your exhale, you send a biological message to your brain. The storm is over. You can stop the simulation. By using this 2-4-8 rhythm, you aren't just relaxing, you are literally shifting the power away from the default mode network and back to your conscious control. You're clearing the background apps so you can actually use your processing power for what matters. But even with a clear system, we still have to deal with the sheer amount of data we process every day. And that brings us to the limits of our mental RAM. In the world of computing, RAM is your random access memory. It's the workspace your computer uses to handle what's happening right now. If you open one tab, it's fast. If you open 50 tabs, run a video editor, and try to update your OS all at once, the system freezes. Your brain has the exact same limitation. Psychologists call this cognitive load. Every tiny decision you make, what to wear, what to eat, how to word that Slack message, eats a piece of your RAM. Overthinking is essentially trying to run a massive complex simulation on a system that is already at 99% capacity. You aren't weak, you're just out of memory. History's most successful minds understood this instinctively. Think about Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, wearing the same outfit every single day. They weren't just being minimalists, they were protecting their RAM. They refused to waste a single byte of processing power on what shirt should I wear, so they could save it for how do I change the world. The school system taught us to cram more information in, but they never taught us how to stop the leakage. To fix this, we need to move from manual to automatic. We do this using a tool called implementation intentions, or what we like to call the if-then protocol. Instead of leaving a decision open to be debated by your overthinking mind, you pre-program the response. You create a mental hotkey. If I start replaying that conversation from 2 years ago, then I will immediately name 3 things I can see in the room right now. If I feel the urge to check my email for the 20th time, then I will do 10 push-ups first. If a what-if thought enters my head, then I will write it down in a spam folder notebook and deal with it at 5 p.m. By setting these if-then rules, you take the decision-making load off your processor. You aren't thinking anymore, you're executing a pre-written script. When you automate the small stuff, you reclaim your RAM. You finally have the energy to focus on the now, instead of being paralyzed by the maybe. But even with a fast processor, we still run into one major problem. We take our thoughts too seriously. We treat them like the truth. And that brings us to the most important reset you will ever perform on your mind. There is a massive trap that almost everyone falls into. We believe that if a thought appears in our head, it must be important, and we are obligated to react to it. We treat our thoughts like subpoenas, legal documents that require an immediate response. But what if we told you that your thoughts aren't orders? They aren't even facts. Your thoughts are just weather. Imagine you're standing at a window. Outside, it might be raining, the sun might be shining, or there could be a blizzard. You can't run outside and use your fists to force the clouds to part. That's exhausting and impossible. But here's the secret. You don't have to. You are inside the house. You can acknowledge the rain is happening without getting soaked by it. In psychology, this is called cognitive diffusion. It's the skill of not arguing with the weather in your head, but simply changing your relationship with it. Remember that radio we talked about at the beginning. The one playing your most cringeworthy moments at 3 a.m. The overthinker's mistake is trying to break into the radio station to smash the equipment. But the more you fight a thought, the louder it gets. Instead of trying to turn the radio off, try changing the way you listen to it. When a what-if spiral starts, don't argue with the logic. Don't try to prove your brain wrong. Simply look at it and say, that's a predictable brain pattern. Or there goes the insecurity script again. By treating the thought as a script or a pattern, you aren't just distancing yourself, you're declassifying the information. You're moving from being the person drowning in the waves to being the scientist on the shore observing the tide. You don't need to stop the thoughts to find peace. You just need to realize that the storm is happening inside you, but it is not you. When you stop identifying with every impulse your brain generates, you gain a superpower. Equanimity. The radio might still be playing in the background, but you are no longer forced to dance to its tune. But sometimes, the weather in our heads gets so loud that we need to physically shift our lens. And that brings us to how you can adjust your mental zoom. Sometimes the radio is just too loud. It's like being in a taxi, where the driver is playing static-filled music at max volume. You can't reach over and smash the radio. That would just cause a crash. But you can choose to stop singing along. You can choose to look out the window instead. This is the architecture of attention. In school, we were told to pay attention, but no one explained that attention is actually a zoom lens. Overthinking is what happens when your lens gets stuck in macro mode, focused entirely on a single tiny blurry thought. You're so zoomed in on the what if that you've lost the rest of the world. To fix a stuck lens, you have to force it to refocus. We do this using a grounding protocol called the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. This isn't just a distraction. It's a manual override that pulls your processing power away from the internal theater and back to the physical hardware of your senses. When the mental radio gets too loud, execute this script. Look for 5 things you can see, not just the wall but the texture of the paint, the way the light hits the corner. Identify 4 things you can feel: the weight of your phone in your hand, the fabric of your shirt, the floor beneath your feet. Acknowledge 3 things you can hear: the hum of the fridge, distant traffic, your own breath. Notice 2 things you can smell, or 2 scents you actually like. Recognize 1 thing you can taste. What you're doing here is reallocating your RAM. Your brain cannot deeply obsess over a 2-year-old conversation while simultaneously processing the intricate texture of a wooden desk. By zooming out from the movie and into the projection booth, you're forcing the DMN, that background refresh we talked about, to shut down so the sensory processor can take over. You decide where the spotlight shines. But even when the light is steady, there's one more layer that often blurs our vision: the vague feeling that something is just wrong. To clear that up, we need to upgrade our internal resolution. Let's talk about the quality of the data your brain is processing. Have you ever noticed how specific we are about things that don't really matter? Think about your morning coffee. We have at least 50 different names for bean water: ristretto, macchiato, flat white, cold brew with oat milk. We demand precision in our caffeine. But when it comes to our internal state, the very thing that dictates the quality of our lives, most of us only have two settings: fine and bad. This is what psychologists call a lack of emotional granularity, and it's one of the biggest reasons your internal radio is so loud. Think of your emotional life like a TV screen. If you only use words like stressed or overwhelmed, you're watching your life in 144p resolution. Everything is a blurry gray mess because the brain can't see exactly what the problem is. It panics. It keeps the background refresh running at 100% because it's trying to identify a threat it can't quite name. The thesis is simple. Precision is 50% of the cure. When you upgrade your vocabulary, you upgrade your emotional resolution to full HD. Research shows that labeling an emotion with high precision actually dampens the activity in your amygdala, the brain's alarm center. Instead of saying, "I'm feeling bad," try to find the exact flavor of the feeling. Is it apprehension, fear of a future event? Is it dejection, sadness due to a loss? Or is it restlessness, energy with nowhere to go? The moment you name it accurately, you're not just feeling anymore, you're categorizing. You're moving from the front row of the theater back to the projection booth. You're giving your processor a specific file name to work with instead of a system error. The higher the resolution of your emotional screen, the lower your anxiety. Why? Because a named monster is just a shadow, but an unnamed one is a nightmare. But even when we can see clearly and name our feelings, we still need a way to stop the RAM leakage before it starts. And for that, we need to talk about how to pre-program our reactions. We've all been there. You make a grand, vague promise to yourself. I'm going to stop worrying so much, or I'll be more present starting Monday. But Monday comes, a stressful text hits your inbox, and your brain immediately slides back into the same old rabbit hole. Why? Because a resolution is just a wish. Your brain doesn't run on wishes, it runs on code. Earlier, we talked about if-then programming as a way to save your RAM, but to truly build an architecture of habits, you need to understand the trigger. The reason school failed us is that they taught us to rely on willpower. But willpower is a battery that drains. Triggers, however, are infinite. To hard code a new habit, you have to attach your new then to an inescapable if. You aren't just saving memory anymore, you're rewiring the circuit. The social spiral trigger. If I feel that familiar heat in my chest after a social interaction, then I will immediately name one thing I'm grateful for about that person. By doing this, you're forcing a system override. The bedtime loop trigger. If my head hits the pillow and the what if radio starts playing, then I will focus only on the physical sensation of my feet against the sheets. With this, you're shifting the data flow from internal to external. The secret to why this works, and why starting on Monday doesn't, is that you are removing the decision gap. Overthinking lives in the space where you have to decide how to feel. By pre-programming these mental hotkeys, you close that space. You aren't trying to be calm, you are executing a command. When you automate these micro-responses, you aren't just managing stress in the moment. You are literally building a new mental operating system. You are moving from a reactive state to an architectural one. But even the best code needs to be compiled and tested to see if it actually works. And that brings us to the final secret of a master thinker, the testing effect. Here is the cold, hard truth. Watching this video will not change your life. Wait, don't close the tab yet. Let me explain. Most people consume self-improvement content like they're watching Netflix. They feel a hit of dopamine, they feel smarter for 20 minutes, and then they go right back to their old patterns. This is because your brain doesn't learn by taking information in. It learns by pulling information out. In neuroscience, this is called the testing effect. Think about it. If you read a map for 10 hours, you might remember the route. But if you drive the route once without a GPS, your brain carves that path into its permanent memory. You have to test the circuit for it to become a highway. Your overthinking is currently a 10-lane highway. Your new skills, the metacognitive gap, the 2-4-8 breathing, The if-then scripts are currently just tiny footpaths in a dense jungle. To turn those footpaths into highways, you have to use them when it's hard. Don't wait for a life crisis to practice. Start with low-stakes testing. The next time you're stuck in traffic, test your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 zoom. The next time you're slightly annoyed by a slow Wi-Fi connection, test your 248 kill switch. Every time you retrieve these tools from your memory and apply them to real life, you're compiling your new code. You're telling your brain, this isn't just a theory, this is our new reality. This is how you move from knowing to being. This is how the compound interest of your mind begins to build. And that leads us to the final movement of this way, the integration. We've covered a lot today. We've moved from the front row of the theater to the projection booth. We've cleared our background apps, upgraded our RAM, and learned to view our thoughts as weather rather than climate. What you're experiencing now is the integration symphony. These tools aren't just isolated tricks. They are a new mental operating system. When you combine them, you start to see compound interest for your mind. The overthinking that once felt like a permanent cage starts to reveal itself for what it truly is, just old wiring. And wiring can always be changed. You see, the person lying awake at 3 a.m., drowning in what-ifs was never broken. They were just untrained. But that ends today. You are no longer an overthinker. You are a thinker who just leveled up. Don't try to revolutionize your entire life by tomorrow morning. That's just the overthinking pattern trying to sneak back in. Instead, pick one tool. Maybe it's the 248 breath, or maybe it's the external label. Master that one, and the rest will follow. Your overthinking wasn't your fault, but your transformation. That is now your choice. If this video helped you see the manual you never knew you had, let us know in the comments which tool you're starting with today. And if you want to keep upgrading your internal operating system and mastering the skills they never taught you in school, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Don't forget to like this video to help others who are still stuck in that front row find their way to the projection booth. Thanks for watching. Now go boot up your new system.